Hi, this is Shannon Blatt, Director of the Office of Personal Career Development at the University of Dallas, and this is Mastering Interviews Part 2. In this video, we'll talk about the STAR method again and behavior-based questions, and we'll go over some sample questions and answers. We'll also discuss questions you can ask the interviewer and then tips on mastering virtual interviews. So to review, the STAR method is how we approach behavior-based questions that begin with the phrase, "Can you tell me about a time when?" Again, what you'll want to do to approach this is to talk about the situation, give some context to describe the situation that answers the question, discuss the tasks that you were assigned with, discuss the actions you took, and then go over the results of the actions that you took and be specific. Also, as a bonus, you can talk about what you learned. So here's an example of how to use the STAR method to answer the question, can you tell me about a time when you had to juggle multiple priorities? So the situation, during my senior year, I was president of a student club, I was working on my thesis, and I was working in the admissions office part-time. I had so much on my plate that I started to get overwhelmed. So the task, I finally realized that I would need to be really organized and ask for help or I would get burned out. And then the specific action steps that you took. I started keeping a detailed calendar and task list that allowed me to see everything that was coming due for the week so I would be prepared. And I started delegating some of the club tasks to other officers. I realized that that would help me and give them practice for next year after I've graduated. So then the results of the actions that you took. Both of those things helped me stay on top of my commitments and maintain my grades for the semester, and I made the dean's list. And then the bonus to talk about what you learned, I learned that you have to address stressful issues before they get out of hand, and I learned it's okay to ask for help. Other common behavior-based questions. Tell me about a time when you had to work with a difficult coworker or team member. Tell me about a time when you worked on a team. What was your role and what were the results? And tell me about a time when you were given a task and no direction. Again, you'll approach these questions in the same way using the STAR method. Give some context to the situation and then discuss the action steps that you took to get the desired results. And by approaching the questions in this format, you're not just giving a quick answer to each question, you're going through your thought process of how you approached solving a problem or solving an issue. And it gives the interviewer insight into your thinking, and also when you're asking the team questions, it can let them understand how you work well with a team. There are some other questions that might come up, and some of the most common ones are what accomplishments are you most proud of and why? And then what's your greatest strength and weakness, and can you tell me about a time you failed? These last two, especially what's your greatest weakness and can you tell me about a time you failed, are particularly challenging, so we'll go over how to answer each one of those. Answering what's your greatest weakness. The most important thing is that you don't say, oh, I don't have any weaknesses, or I've never failed. And then secondarily, you don't want to try to turn a strength into a weakness. Oh, I just work too hard, or I just care too much about my customers. You have to be honest, because what you need to realize with this question is that recruiters are trying to test your self-awareness. Everyone has weaknesses, everyone has failed, and by coming to terms with that and being able to discuss your weaknesses and your plan for addressing them, then you show the recruiter that you have a level of maturity and self-awareness that would benefit their team. But again, the most important thing is that you talk about the steps that you're taking to address it. So here's an example. I've found that when I have a lot of things to do at once, I get overwhelmed and I just freeze up and not knowing where to start. So I'm addressing that by breaking every new project into smaller, more manageable steps so that it's not so daunting to look at the whole project at once. You're being honest, but then you're immediately talking about the steps you're taking to address that. Again, that communicates self-awareness, and it communicates your ability to take feedback and to address things that you need to work on. It's a similar approach to answer, tell me about a time you failed. Again, you have to be honest, but the most important part in here is to talk about what you learned from that experience. Again, it's a test of your self-awareness, it's a test of your ability to take feedback, and it's a test of your desire to learn and grow in a position. So here's an example. I was part of a marketing group, or I was part of a group project in my marketing class, and no one was willing to take charge. We tried to have meetings to discuss the project, and no one really wanted to do anything. We never really agreed on a plan for dividing up the work. So 2 days before the assignment was due, we were all freaking out, trying to do research and make a PowerPoint. And then one person got sick, and another had to go out of town for a track meet, and that left me having to pull an all-nighter to do the entire project myself. It was not successful, and we didn't get a good grade on the project. I learned that it's okay to take charge early on in a project and set deadlines if no one else does. That way, everyone is clear on what they're supposed to do and when they need to do it. Again, addressing this was a failure. This was something that I should have done differently. My group, we all should have done differently. And here's what I've learned from that. And here's why I won't make that same mistake again. Again, it's a kind of a test of your awareness and your maturity. Expect the unexpected. There are definitely interviewers that like to throw curveballs. You can never really prepare for some of these, but the more you know your resume and the more you know your experience and the more you've thought about the transferable skills that you've gained from your different experiences, the easier these questions will be to answer. What they're really trying to get at with these questions is, can you think on your feet? Can they throw you that curveball and you still have the poise to answer it? It's okay to take a moment to think before you answer the question. A recruiter would rather you stop and take a breath and ask for a little more time than just start rambling incoherently, trying to hope that you'll find an answer to the question. So if you get an unexpected question, if you were an animal, what kind would you be? It's perfectly acceptable to say, that's an interesting question. Can you give me just a minute to think about that? And then take a breath and then proceed to answer the question. Always answer honestly to these questions. Don't try to game what you think the interviewer wants to hear. Answer honestly, but be prepared to give reasons for your answers. So don't just blurt out something that you really have no way to back up. Some other common ones: what's the most recent book you read? What's in your backpack right now? And what do you think has prepared you to do this job? To answer that question, you really need to understand the job description and make sure that you can show how your experience aligns with the qualifications that are expected. Do you have any questions for me? That's actually the most common way to wrap up an interview, and it's extremely important. It ties into what we discussed in part one, the question, why do you want to work for this company? Because in answering this question, you can really show that you've done your research and that you've been picturing yourself in this position. The worst possible thing you can say is, nope, no questions. I don't have any questions for you. I think you covered everything. The second worst thing is, how many vacation days do I get? Wait to discuss salary, benefits, and things like that until you're having a conversation with the HR representative when you get the offer. You really need to have about 5 good questions ready to go. You'll probably only ask 2 or 3 of them, but if you have 5 ready to go, then that way, if the recruiter answers one of those questions during the course of the interview, then you're not left saying, no, I don't have any questions for you at the end. Here's some good questions to ask. And notice a lot of things that these questions have in common is that they show that you've done your research and that you're picturing yourself in this job and that this is the job you want, not just any old job, but this job. So here's some examples of some good questions. Can you give me an idea of the types of projects that the intern usually does? What's the usual career track for someone who starts in this position? Can you describe a day in the life of someone in this position? What do you like best about working for this company? I saw on your website that you have employee groups that spend time volunteering. What are some of the community programs you've supported? And after they answer the question, that also gives you the opportunity to say, wow, I find that really interesting. I like to do volunteer work as well. And those programs sound like something that are very worthwhile. You know, something that you can do to go ahead, tie it up in a bow at the end and remind the recruiter about your skills and experience and why you would be a good person for the job. But again, good, thoughtful questions show them that you've done your research and you're really considering what it would be like to work for that company. Okay, types of video interviews. There are really two types of interviews, the Higher View or other similar platforms, and the Zoom, Skype, or Google Meet interviews. And these are going to be more and more popular in the coming weeks. We're thinking that while remote and virtual work are so popular, they're about the only way that interviews are being conducted right now. But we think that they'll continue on in popularity even after the COVID-19 situation is resolved. In a Higher View interview, you will be given prompts and then you will record your answers you can use your laptop or your phone. You'll have time to practice, but you can't start over once you hit record. So once you get the prompt, practice it a little in your head, go over it a couple of times, and then hit record. With a Zoom or Skype or Google Meet interview, that's a virtual interview where you're interacting with the person in real time. So some do's and don'ts for phone screens, video interviews, Higher View interviews, anything like that. Definitely go into a quiet room. And always smile. That may sound, even if it's a phone screen, it's something that the recruiter can hear it in your voice. And if you're smiling on your Higher View interview in a natural way, then that will be something that the recruiter will pick up on. If you are doing a phone screen, don't walk around while you're on the phone screen. Stay in one spot. And even on the Higher View interviews, it's okay to have notes, but try to spread your papers out before you start so that you aren't shuffling back and forth while you're talking, because a lot of times the microphone can pick that up. Absolutely don't try to do a phone screen in the car while you're driving. Number one, it's not safe. Number two, the audio is just too distorted. So for virtual interviews, for the ones that are actually a Higher View or a Skype or Google Meet, make sure that you have a clean background. Test your camera first to make sure you know everything that's in the frame and that there's not any empty water bottles or anything like that, any trash in the background. So you want to make sure it's a clean and non-distracting background. Test the mic, the camera, and the speakers before the interview and make sure all your tabs are closed so that something doesn't pop up and start playing randomly. And look nice. Make sure that you're well groomed and go the extra mile. Wear a jacket and tie if you have it available. For gentlemen and for ladies, wear a nice dress or a nice top. Obviously they won't see you from the waist down, but if you look nice and presentable, then it will make a difference. And again, make sure to smile and look at the camera, especially in the Higher View situation. You can even put a little post-it next to your camera to remind you not to be looking at the screen or at the thumbnail of yourself, but to be looking directly at the screen so that you can present your full face when you're answering the questions. Virtual interviews are more important now than ever. If you can show poise and professionalism in virtual interviews, then that will indicate that you could handle yourself in a virtual or remote work situation in those kinds of settings. Because as we all know, Zoom meetings and Google Meets, those are extremely popular right now. And so and that's the way the businesses are conducting their usual procedures today, so that if you can go ahead and show that you have the technological capabilities to master this type of format, then you'll be ready to take on remote work as well. So the better you handle this with the most poise and professionalism, the better message you send to a recruiter. So if you have any questions, please contact me. My email is sblatt1@udallas.edu, and we're taking virtual appointments via Handshake. So please visit Handshake to make an appointment and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye-bye.